Today's pod, we're talking about everything around the trade deadline, some new names, some old names. If the Mavericks were going to trade for somebody this week, who would you want them to trade for? That and more coming up on today's pod.
Doncic, and this is Locked On Mavericks podcast.
Hey, Dallas Mavericks are NBA champions. Bang! Bang! It's good! And the Mavericks have won the game!
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
Welcome to Locked On Mavs. This is one of your co-hosts, Isaac Harris. I'm a contributor at Mavs.com. And today I'm riding solo because Nick is traveling across country for a quick trip for something in his family. I'll let him tell you about that. But I'm holding down the fort today as we kind of go around the league and talk about some things, some new names, some old names that we have heard in the rumor mill, in the trade mill, and all of that. But today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered the season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, let's do this. Let's hang out today. A lot of you guys are listening in your car on the way to work. It's a Tuesday. Some of you might be like dreading, work today. It's like, hey, listen, the trade deadline is in 2 days. This is like prime speculation, rumors. If you like me, you have like all these random people on notifications too. Like, just hook it up to my veins. I'm all here for it. Even though if half of it is probably more than half of it's not even true, I'm here for all of it. I just love thinking about new things, new possibilities, and then just hoping something fun happens. So then we could talk about it from a content, from a fan perspective, everything. But a little housekeeping at first from a Mavs angle. KP, the Mavericks play at the Detroit Pistons tonight in Dallas. Welcome to Dallas, Cade Cunningham. Actually, I don't even know if he's actually playing tonight. I need to check the injury report for that. But Koo does a great job. He's our Locked On Pistons host. He does a great job covering those guys. So if you want some a Pistons angle to that, make sure you follow him on Twitter. He sent out a tweet the other day. He said Trey Lyles. He said, I'm paraphrasing here, Trey Lyles is one of the more annoying players for him to watch since watching DeLon Wright. And I'm like, wow, welcome to that party. But Kristaps Porzingis out tonight against the Pistons. 21st game of the season that he will be out. It's his 5th game in a row that he's been out for this lingering knee issue. I have zero other insight or comments to add to that. It is a bummer. I have not heard a timetable at the time that I'm recording this. We record this pod at 11:03 Central Time on Monday night. So you guys might know something about KP. More than I do. But Maxi's out tonight also. Game 3 in a row for him, with him being out with his knee issue. And so a little shorthanded going against the Pistons team. And speaking of the Pistons, let's stay on Jerami Grant. So real quick, I posed a question today on Twitter, and I said, hey, if there's one player or who is a player that you want the Mavericks to go out and trade for this week, and got a plethora. How's that for a word for you today? Plethora of responses, and I'm gonna spend the last two segments going through some of your responses to that. I'll shout some of you out. Some of you guys were hilarious. Shout out to the guy who said, hey, Desmond Bane. I didn't know if he was he said Desmond Bane, local kid, played right down the road at TCU. I don't know if you guys know that, but Desmond Bane is played college ball here in Dallas. Local kid. I don't know if the Mavs know about him or not, but he's a good player. Anyway, going back to Jerami Grant, Matt Moore, HP Basketball on Twitter, and of the Action Network and Locked On Network. Yeah, he's a podcast host here for the Locked On Network. I shot him a DM. I was like, hey man, I've seen you had some Mavs stuff, and just make sure you go follow him on Twitter. A lot of you guys already follow him on Twitter. But this was written format. He's dropped a couple pieces over the past few days of just trade intel around the league and all of that. So a couple little Mavs nuggets in there. Not Denver Nuggets, but a little little bits of information. Jerami Grant, he put this when he was kind of describing the unique situation the Pistons are in with Grant. He adds this at the bottom of that report. He says, both the Utah Jazz and the Dallas Mavericks, once again, this is Matt Moore, Action Network, HP Basketball on Twitter. He said, both the Utah Jazz and Dallas Mavericks have explored a deal for Grant in recent weeks. Sources said, but both face an uphill climb to generate the assets needed to generate Detroit's interest. So Jerami Grant, we've talked about it a handful of times. I feel like a lot of different teams in the league are interested in him. You're looking at a guy who can get buckets, 20 points a game, 27 years old. He makes $20 million this year, $21 million next year, guaranteed. But if you trade for him, you're obviously committing to that extension. You're looking at that 4-year extension, high dollar. So if you trade for him, whoever does, trade for him, if they do trade him, you're obviously going to make this commitment to a guy who played this role in Denver, played this complementary role, I guess, for this, playoff team, for a really good team in Denver. He wanted his own limelight, his own show there, and went to Detroit. And what a season he had last year, right? I mean, 22 points a game last year. He jumped up. He made that leap. A lot of people didn't think he could make that leap. He did. But it was a bad team. And it's another bad team this season. His number's a little bit down. He's dealt with some injuries and stuff this year. But, I mean, from a Mavs angle of this, I don't think there's any way that you can get into if the Mavericks wanted to get Jerami Grant, which I think of all the responses I got to that, I didn't see hardly any Jerami Grant. So I'm assuming a lot of you guys are not about the Jerami Grant addition in Dallas. But I'll just say this: if the Mavericks are interested in Jerami Grant, I would assume that you can't even get close to that without including Jalen Brunson. Now we have seen a couple different places. Jake Fisher at Bleacher Report. I want to say somebody else too. Sorry if I'm missing this person. Has reported that the Pistons have been interested or are interested in Jalen Brunson. They're one of the handful of teams that would have cap space this coming up summer, this offseason, to chase Jalen Brunson. So if they're interested, they got the money. So would they go chasing Brunson before the deadline? How much, if the Mavs are interested, I mean, how much are you adding with Brunson to get a guy like Jerami Grant? Is there a Porzingis angle to this? With Pistons, they don't have a ton of, bigs that I would say would prevent them from, Anyway, I don't know what the Jerami Grant angle is. I don't know Dallas' level of interest in Jerami Grant. I think if he did end up in Dallas, there is a scenario where I could see how it fits as far as another guy who can, get buckets, that can score, that can defend. He's a wing. He could play in a playoff series, all of this stuff. I understand all of that. So, I'll be curious to what happens with him over the coming days. He could go anywhere. I mean, he could go to Portland. He could go to a playoff team in the East. I have no clue where he's going to go. Matt Moore also said in a piece before this Jerami Grant piece, I want to say it was like 3 days ago, he said he just casually dropped in there that the Mavericks have made calls about Pascal Siakam. I'm not going to touch on this a lot because I don't think this is realistic, especially if you guys have been following Siakam over the past few weeks. This man, ever since he's came back from his COVID protocols and all of that, has been balling out for Toronto. So, I just don't think Dallas can even get involved with that. I think even if Porzingis was healthy, I think that would be a tough. It's just Siakam's playing better than Porzingis right now, and he's healthy. So that's that. I will add the tiny little nugget that the Raptors were one of Porzingis' 4 teams. If you go back to the when Porzingis was kind of on his way out of New York, there was that list of 4 teams that kind of leaked out there that Porzingis was wanting to go to. Obviously, we know Dallas was not on that list at the time, and then bam, Dallas came out of nowhere. But to my recollection, the Raptors was on that list. So that was a handful of years ago. I don't think they have a shot at Siakam. Coming up next, we're going to talk about some of your tweets. Some of you guys threw out some names, and I want to talk about some names that we haven't really talked about a ton on the pod. We'll talk a little bit about John Collins, CJ, but there are a few names you guys threw out to me that I want to discuss a little bit further. But first, This pod is brought to you by TurboTax. TurboTax. Now, I've used TurboTax a handful of times for my taxes, so I'm a fan of what they do. People think the unusual circumstances mean complicated taxes, but for TurboTax Live experts, that's what makes things interesting. We all have unique lives. Whether you're interested in crypto for the first time this year, own an up-and-coming small business, or are raising rambunctious twins. I don't have twins. I have 2 rambunctious kids under the age of 4. But luckily, TurboTax Live has experts who can answer all your tax questions. I have plenty of tax questions, walk you through the whole process, do your taxes for you from start to finish. They help you get every deduction you deserve. So use TurboTax. TurboTax Live experts are here to help you however you need. And if you need an extra hand your taxes off to them, and they'll do it all for you. To TurboTax Live experts, an interesting life can mean an even greater refund. So do your thing. You've got your taxes into it. TurboTax Live. Okay. I need Nick to do these ad reads. They kill me, especially when my voice is hurting. And I'm trying not to cough for you guys, because then you come at me. Did I look up cough buttons on Amazon last night? Maybe so. So shout out. If I just take a drink of water, get off me. Don't judge me on the YouTube channel. If you're listening in your car and you're like, hey, did my pod just stop for a second? No, it didn't. It was just me taking a drink of water. So give me like 15, 20 seconds. And then just don't tell Nick that I'm just like pausing and taking a drink like right now. Let's go. Let's do it. Okay. Segment 2. This is awesome. I posed a question on Twitter reminding you here. One player that you want the Mavericks to trade for over the next coming days. Next like 48 hours. Let's do that. A lot of different responses. Lee Page. My buddy Lee Page said Stanley. Stanley from The Office. Sorry, Lee. Don't think it could happen. We had Wes Matthews. At 627, Zach said Eric Gordon or Larry Nance. Now, we've talked about Eric Gordon a handful of times. I think a lot of people around the league are trying to get him right now. He's a vet. He can shoot the basketball. He can defend. He makes near $20 million this year. Has that year for next season around that $19-20 million mark. Cleveland's off the board, looks like, for him. So where does he go? I think he does end up on a contender. I'll be interested to see what the package for him looks like compared to Karis LeVert's package of that, late first round pick, that early second round pick from Houston that they got for LeVert, and that expiring for Rubio. So can Houston get a first round pick? Can Houston get cap relief for next season? We'll see what Houston can pull off with that. But the second name that Zach says in this tweet said Larry Nance. Larry Nance, we haven't talked about a lot because we don't know what Portland's going to do, right? Like, we don't know how many players they're going to sell off. If it's CJ, is it Nurkic? Larry Nance is this guy. He's 29 years old. He makes $10.6 million this year, makes $9 million next year. He's this guy. He plays above the rim. We know he can dunk. We've seen him in that dunk contest. Shout out to his dad. He can play defense. He's a fun big. He's around that 6'9", 6'10" mark. He just doesn't shoot threes, right? So if you try to envision him in Dallas, envision that Dwight Powell role. That's Larry Nance. Portland. I don't know what Portland's going to do with him because they just traded a first for him not too long ago. So they kind of went, that trade. It was a 3-team trade that they kind of pushed their chips in to get Larry Nance. They threw a first into that to get him. So, if I'm them, I think I just hold on to him. I think they're more looking at that Nurkic, CJ McCollum, stuff of, hey, let's try to trade off these guys. Let's keep Larry Nance for a little bit and go from there. But if Dallas could get their hands on Nance and bring him to Dallas, he would fit. He would fit in that, like I said, that Dwight Powell role. I'm not opposed to it. It's not the guy that I'm going after, especially a guy who can't shoot threes. And if a guy can't shoot threes, especially a big, then the only other guys that I'm looking at in that range is, okay, well, if you can't shoot threes, then I really want you to be able to protect the basket, right? Like a guy, here in a little bit, I want to talk about is Mitchell Robinson. And, this guy's 23 years old. He's had some injury problems in New York, but dude can defend the rim. He's super athletic. He could catch a lob. He's not shooting threes, but at least he's defending the rim. So that's my only thing with Nance of I'm not opposed to it. I'm just not actively going after him because he doesn't shoot the threes and he's not really defending. He's not your anchor on defense, if you want to say that. Shout out to Dylan who sent me the Desmond Bain tweet. I already said that. Rafael Rocha 87. If I butchered that, sorry. He said Jeremy Lamb into the traded player exception. Now, I'm pretty sure that Jeremy Lamb makes just a tad bit over what the TPE is. Just a tad bit over that. I could be wrong. If not, then ignore that. Let's just assume that you could absorb Lamb into that. It wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. Lamb is a wing. He shot 40% from three last year. He struggled a little bit this year. He plays for the Pacers with Rick and those guys up there. He shoot 33% from three this year. I'm not, we're not doing an emergency pod for Jeremy Lamb. I'm sorry if they trade for him tomorrow. I don't know. Nick might text me and say we need to, but, and then I'll just laugh at him. But Jeremy Lamb's not, If it's the end of the deadline, Mavericks have done nothing. They have the TPE and it's like, hey, we'll just take you for free if you want to shed some more money. Then sure, why not? But it's kind of like the Schroeder stuff. It's like, sure, why not? If it's right at the buzzer, no one's taking him. Sure, take him into the TP. But I'm not really, going, too excited for that one. Now, this one is a name that we haven't talked about for the Mavs that I'm really curious. I just DM'd Doug Branson, one of the hosts for Locked On Hornets a little bit ago. But Sir on Twitter @Sir Dromos said PJ Washington. Now, I like PJ Washington. I've liked him ever since he came into the league. He's this athletic big. He's around 6'8", plays for Charlotte. He's 23 years old. He's still on the rookie contract, so he makes around that $4.2 million range. Going into next year, that's when they'll have to decide on, what that extension looks like for him. If they want to, extend him, then he could go into restricted free agency, all that different stuff. Shoots 40% from three. And I'm really curious, and what I asked Doug, and if some of you listeners are more familiar with the Hornets and stuff, is why don't they want to keep him? Is it a money thing because you have all these guys? You paid Terry Rozier, obviously you're paying Gordon Hayward. You want to bring in? Is it just a simple, hey, we just want to upgrade, and that's the only piece we have? Because you're about to pay Miles Bridges. Somebody tweeted at me and said Miles Bridges, and I just don't think we have a shot at Miles Bridges. I mean, unless they just hey, we really don't want to pay him. We don't think he fits and all this stuff. But it seems like he's fitting well there. He's having a really good season, so I'm not really considering Bridges. So if it's just the fact of, hey, we have to use Washington to get a big on the roster or get another center on the roster, I kind of get it. But, man, I like him. A 40%, big, who's athletic, who's still super young. So, yeah, if I'm Dallas, man, if I could – it's that type of move to where I'm not breaking the bank to go get him, but if it's at a discount and let's say it's more of a money thing for Charlotte, hey, we know we're not going to be able to pay him next year. We want to allocate our funds other places. Then I'm interested in a PJ Washington. So I like him. I'll be seeing what happens with him over the next few days, and I'll be surprised if they just kind of dump him for nothing. It would make more sense if he's the centerpiece to go get a Sabonis or Miles Turner or something like that. Just real quick before we take another break, at Billy Sierra says, Jonas Valanciunas or Jakob Poeltl. Valanciunas, I've read different reports that, he's kind of off limits for New Orleans. When you look at New Orleans, if New Orleans is interested in Senior McCollum and, some of these guys that are more win now, then you want to keep Valanciunas. So I don't really expect them to trade him, because I think he's a guy you want on your squad in the playoffs. If they do trade him, I think I've said on the spot a few times that I like him. I would love his addition to Dallas. But Poeltl is such an interesting case because it feels like, you guys are reading the same things I am, that other teams are really going after him because he's this, he's 26-year-old center there in San Antonio. He makes around $8 million this year, a little over $9 million next year. And, he can run to the basket. He can set his picks kind of like a traditional big. He's not shooting a three and all of that, but he's still young. He's a little bit athletic and stuff. So I'll be curious to see what happens with him over the few days. I would assume he gets traded, whether it's Toronto or whoever it is. With the Dallas stuff and the center rotation, I think it might have been Jake Fisher who wrote the other day of hey, Dallas has 1 million centers on the roster, but they're out there shopping. And I think it's just a testament of, hey, yeah, we have a lot of centers, but there's none of them that we're super thrilled about. We Dwight is holding his ground right now and all that, but do they land another big out there before this deadline is over? I'll be really curious to see what Dallas does with that. But I mean, Poeltl, I'm not against Poeltl. Once again, I don't know if I'm, texting Nick saying, hey, find a computer. We got to do this emergency pod for Jakob Poeltl. But I think, could he be the best center on the team outside of KP? I mean, we could have that conversation, and however you want to take that conversation, let's have it. But yeah, it would be an okay addition. Let's take another quick break, and then we'll be back. And I have a trade that somebody sent that I actually think makes sense for everybody. And it doesn't happen a lot. Everybody loves Trade Machine, including myself. I send dumb trades to Nick all the time and some of my buddies. But somebody sent me a trade today, and I'm like, you know what? I can actually see how this could make sense for everybody. So coming up next, let's talk about that trade, and I'll give that person a shout out on Twitter. But this pod is brought to you by Bet Online. Bet Online, as you cover the season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before as football continues its march through the playoffs right up to the Super Bowl. Shout out to the Bengals being in the Super Bowl this coming up Sunday. Should I want them to win just for Nick's sake? Nick and I, we're really good friends. We do this pod every single day. I'm so happy for him. I don't really care. Sorry, I don't really care who wins, but I guess I'll root for them just because of Nick and Scott Tomlin for the Mavs, big Bengals guy. But anyway, BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, news this season. It's not just football. BetOnline has up-to-the-minute info on pro and college hoops. It's rolling right now. NHL, boxing, that's two separate things, by the way. UFC, live, real-time updates of current games. Don't wait to take advantage of all our new amazing offers available for the 2022 season. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, let's talk about this trade. Shout out to Gravity's Edge 14. One that sounds like some generic Xbox gamer tag whenever you sign up and you don't really have anything that you want to name your gamer tag, and Xbox just gives you something. Gravity's Edge 14 sounds like something that Xbox gave you. Shout out to everybody that's playing Xbox right now. Trying to find an Xbox Series X for a friend, so holler if you have one. It really is for a friend. I'm not saying hey for a friend. If you want to play Rocket League, holler at me with that. Let's do this. Gravity's Edge 14 says 3-team trade: Dallas, Atlanta, Boston. Schroeder, John Collins to Dallas. Marcus Smart, Maxi Kleber to Atlanta. Jalen Brunson, Dwight Powell to Boston. I thought about this for a little bit, and I'm staring at it right now on my computer if you're watching YouTube. You're like, what is he looking at? Is he praying? His eyes are shut. I thought about this for a little bit because, if Brunson goes anywhere, it has to be a team that's wanting to commit to him as their starting point guard for a while, right? And we've heard the Boston stuff. We've speculated on the Boston stuff. We speculated on New York stuff, Detroit. Yesterday's pod, I was throwing out there about the Indiana thing because, if I'm Rick and I'm, doing this rebuilding, retooling, all of this stuff, over the next year or so, I'm taking my newfound cap space after that Levert-Rubio trade and saying, hey, I'm going to go after Jalen Brunson because I know how good he is. I coached him in Dallas. So there's a handful of teams that could very well go after Brunson this summer, but Boston, he would fit well in. So I'm approaching this, this Gravity's Edge tweet here saying, I actually could see it for each side in this deal. Like if Boston trades Marcus Smart and Dennis Schroeder and gets back Jalen Brunson, Dwight Powell, I get it, right? They get some big depth in Dwight Powell, but they get their point guard in Jalen Brunson that can run the show. I get Marcus Smart has been playing good basketball of late and has been running the show, but we all know the stuff with Marcus Smart in Boston. We read the same stuff, and Jalen Brunson feels like he could be a younger option who could, set the offense there, set the table for him, and if they really like him, this is your chance to go get him. For Atlanta, if you're going to trade John Collins, you get back Marcus Smart and you get back Maxi Kleber. Maxi can obviously play with Clint Capella. He could play with Okongwu. He could play with any of the Atlanta bigs. And then you get Marcus Smart to go alongside Trae Young. Like if you're Atlanta and you're going to swap out John Collins and now you're going to form this two-way, obviously Kevin Huerter could come off the bench, all of that. But you could form this defensive tandem on the wing of DeAndre Hunter and Marcus Smart, like that's scary to me. I mean, I'm just saying that that would be appealing to me if I was Atlanta. And then if you're Dallas, you're trading Jalen Brunson and Maxey and Dwight Powell for Schroeder and John Collins. And, obviously this would be the move for John Collins. How do you feel about, if they made a move like that, they would be confident in the John Collins Porzingis front court pairing, however you feel about that. And then however you want to view how Porzingis and Dwight Powell play together, then just put John Collins into that Dwight Powell role. He could roll to the basket. We know he could catch lobs. He did it the other night against Dallas. He can actually score in the post. He could shoot the three-pointer. We've seen Dwight, get open threes and stuff. Defensively, have some big questions for that. And obviously you would ask, Dennis Schroeder to come off the bench and, give you some bucket stuff there. I'm not saying I'm in love with this deal. I'm just saying hats off to Gravity's Edge for at least sending a deal that I could see if you just wanted to put on a certain pair of glasses and look at it and be like, okay, I can see the framework of this like working for all three teams involved. So shout out for throwing out a trade like that. Let me take a drink real quick. Not a break, a drink. Okay. Talked about Mitchell Robinson a little bit. He's just somebody I'm watching in New York. What do they do with him over the next few days? If Dallas does engage New York in any type of trade, with his 1.8 expiring, I would love to just kind of steal him in some type of deal because I just like the way he plays basketball. At Yeti Moose, shout out to that handle. He brings up Robert Covington. Obviously, he just got traded from Portland to the Clippers. He's on this expiring for $12.9 billion. He's 31. He shot 35%, from last year. Tim McMahon has said this line multiple times, and I absolutely love it on different pods. Tim has said Dorian Finney-Smith is what people think Robert Covington is. I agree. I think Robert Covington's a little bit overrated in the sense of what people view him as. But here's my thing with him. If you could get Covington, because like I said, he's on this expiring deal for like $13 million. So what does he want to do next year? What does the Clippers view this as? If they're like, hey, we don't know if Paul George is going to come back. If that trade was purely to get Norman Powell to be on this team for next year, to play with Kawhi and Paul George and all those guys, and it's still okay, I'm glad we made the trade now, but we're not really going to go all in this year, then why not try to see what you can get for Covington over the next 2 days? And if Dallas could sneak in and steal Covington and add Covington, not replace Dorian and Bullock, but add Covington to that wing depth rotation of can you add Covington to Reggie and to Dorian? That's the scenario that I would love Covington. And so I don't know what the price would be to trade for Covington and all of that, but I'm still interested if they start shopping him more over the next 48 hours. Somebody tweeted at me, I'm sorry I didn't write your name down, and said Lou Dort. I just want to say Lou Dort's one of those dudes that me personally, I would probably overpay more than a lot of you guys would for somebody like Lou Dort. Because, one, I would love Lou Dort alongside Luka. I think he's like the younger / better at this moment version of Marcus Smart. He would just be so much fun in Dallas, and I would probably give up too much than what I would be willing to admit on this pod. I would just love him next to Luka. I'm sorry. So love Lou Dort. And lastly, I'm just still watching Miles Turner. That's just the name I'm watching this week from a Mavs angle. I know the foot stuff. We saw Jake Fisher, report, was it last week that, he got a new scan. Looks like he's going to come back, sooner than what people expected, whether it's the end of this month, first, part of March there. I'm just watching Miles Turner from a Mavs angle this week of what's the market going to be like for him. Is the trade package going to go down a little bit? Like I was kind of surprised. I thought LeVert, would net the Pacers a little bit more. What does Miles Turner get you? Like if they trade off Sabonis and get a big package back, do they kind of write off the Turner and say, the Turner package is like, hey, we'll get what we can, but he's hurt and we get it, but we just want to push this, full reset here. So basically what I'm saying is, can you get Miles Turner at a discount at the final buzzer there? That's what I'm watching. And I know it was reported and everything that, Dallas had backed off of the Miles Turner pursuit before the injury and all of that stuff. But I don't know. I would just watch. I'm watching that. He could very well be a Charlotte Hornet 24 hours from now. And we're like, okay, well, this looks dumb. But I'm watching what happens with him by Thursday. Love this time of the year. It's a lot of fun. We'll be back tonight. Dallas plays Detroit. It's the last game before the trade deadline, and we'll see what happens with that. There's some Pistons players that could be on the move. Does somebody get the Harrison Barnes treatment, on Wednesday night? Does Jerami Grant get the Harrison Barnes treatment to where he gets traded mid-game and all of that? I mean, Karis LeVert was about to play the Cleveland Cavaliers. He got traded. Does the same thing happen to Jerami Grant as he's about to play the Mavs? I don't know. But what I do know is we'll have a pod for you every single day leading up to the deadline. We'll have a pod for you shortly after the deadline. No matter what happens, we'll have a pod for you. So stay locked on the Mavs. And subscribe, share the pod wherever you listen. Peace out. Boom.